This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Noah Tluki, and on today's episode, Lions losing big on Thanksgiving, yet again, 41-25. But the big news, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, the era is over. We're going to break down that firing, and also we're going to talk about ownership, what they're going to do to make sure that they hire the right coach. We're also going to get into some Rod Wood discussion, team president, and Sheila Ford and the Ford family's right-hand man with this Lions organization. Also some Matthew Stafford comments that I thought were pretty interesting as well. And joining us later, it'll be an exclusive interview with former Lions Pro Bowler Steve Boyd, who played for the Lions for 7 seasons in the 90s and early 2000s. This will be really fun. First time that he's talked about his Lions experience in a long time, so really looking forward to that one. All right, I want to keep this a little bit short and sweet because we got a really nice interview with Steve coming up. But Lions losing to the Texans, but that's not the story here, okay? Is it a surprise that they got blown out with Matt Patricia, and the staff to a Texans team that had a worse record than the Lions? No, I'm not surprised at all. Deshaun Watson just lit everybody up on Thanksgiving, lit everybody up like a Christmas tree, lit up that secondary. Not good, but you know what was good was that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, and I mentioned this last week, how they might be fired after Thanksgiving because that's what the Lions did in 2005 when they fired Steve Mariucci. I thought there might be something similar in the works, and there was. So Saturday, the Quinn-Tricia era officially came to an end in Detroit. A couple observations, though. Why would they announce this during the Michigan football game? They know that there's media members out there that cover Michigan and the Lions. So don't you think that they would do it another time after the game or maybe before or something like that? I just thought that was interesting how during the Michigan game, because, I turn on sports radio, 97.1 to hear what's going on. And then I hear Jim Brandstatter doing play-by-play for Michigan. I says, unbelievable. They're doing this during the Michigan game. Crazy. The other observation. So I had a friend, he's up with all kinds of sources and all that. He always tells me. He was the one that texted me that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn were gone. And the first thing I did was I'm looking on Facebook, I'm looking on social media, I'm looking on TV to see if there's like a live press conference right now or if there's a scheduled time for a press conference. I don't see anything. And I thought that was really weird. So then a couple hours passed and, I go back because I thought, okay, maybe I missed it. Maybe I just didn't see it at all. And then all of a sudden, I go on YouTube, and it says 1 minute ago, Lions post the press conference. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this was a pre-recorded press conference. So I watched the whole thing, and I realized, yes, this was pre-recorded. This was not some live thing. It was live to a couple of the media members that were there. And then, it was put on YouTube, and none of the major networks, according to Matt Derry, our friend from Locked On Lions, none of the major networks could record it live. WXYZ, WDIV, WJBK, none of them were recording it live. Unbelievable. I thought this would be like a live press conference. It's crazy there. By the way, shout out to our Detroit podcast founder, John Macaroon. He actually asked a question during the press conference about Matthew Stafford. Told you we're going to be getting into Stafford later. Shout out to him. Does a great job covering the Lions for Sports Illustrated. So like I said, I watched the press conference on YouTube. Recorded, of course, not live. I wanted to watch it live. But there were a couple of thoughts that I had because, we never hear from ownership. Rod Wood, same thing. We never hear from these people. So every time they speak, it's always, my ears always perk up because this is, okay, well, what are they going to say this time, basically? So, and obviously I knew it was about the firing, but I wanted to hear, the reasoning and all that. So a couple takeaways. First thing I thought of that was laughable that Sheila said was, 10 days ago, we were in the playoff chase. Our chances were looking good for the playoffs. Oh, hold right there. What? And you know me. If you've listened to this, I'm a diehard Lions fan. I'm very, very supportive of this team. And I'm very, very positive. I'm going to admit that. I'll be the first person to admit that. But I don't know. Even me, I don't even know if I would have said that. I always was saying, there might be a chance, but I never thought it was guaranteed. I says, okay, maybe mathematically, if this happens, but no, I never meant it to be like some official thing, like it's 100% going to happen. Sheila, the fact that she goes on there and starts talking about that didn't sit right with me. That was a little strange. I never would expect an owner to, they usually talk about, it's disappointing, it's this and this, we just got to get back, we got to find the right person. No, but then she says, 10 days ago, we're looking at the playoffs. If she knew what was going on, she would know that this football team is not necessarily a playoff caliber team. Yeah, it has talent here and there in some places, but the defense is bad. And Matt Patricia was not the right head coach for this team. She should know that. Also, another takeaway. So I noticed this as well. And I know Mike Valeni, one of my favorites on Detroit Sports Radio, he also mentioned this. And I'm going to mention it again. And something I noticed. Rod Wood was there. And Sheila kept saying, Rod and I, Rod and I, Rod and I. So it seems like they're partnering on these moves. And I'll tell you why that's a problem. Because a couple years ago, when Rod Wood was hired, he publicly said that he is not a football guy. So, and I understand. Presidents are supposed to do more stuff with marketing and operations of the facility and all that. The owners, all of them pretty much billionaires, they run other companies. The Fords run Ford Motor Company. I know that there's other things in the way that might prevent them from being, savvy with football. I get that. But don't you think somebody with at least some sort of football knowledge, knowing the business of the actual game of football with personnel, with coaching, with general managing, don't you think somebody should at least be having a final say with that? Because Rod Wood isn't that guy. He's the Ford family banker. He is in charge of their estate. If they need any financial advice, investing and all that, they go to Rod Wood. And that's for the whole family. And he's the one that's involved with the Detroit Lions. He's the one that Bob Quinn reported to. So he's higher up on the chain than Bob Quinn was to Martha and Sheila. So I guess we'll see what happens. Personally, I'm willing to give Sheila a chance. I want to see if she's a little different than her mom, Martha, and her dad, Bill Ford Sr. I want to give her a fair chance. However, I don't know. It seems like she was mentored under the tutelage of the inept Ford family when it comes to making these decisions. But still, I'm at least willing to give him a chance. There's some hope here. Maybe Rod Wood will straighten out. I don't know. I don't know. But I guess we'll just have to wait. I'm not going to play the name game. I'm not bringing out who the best candidates are, especially for general manager, because a lot of times, a lot of the people don't even know who these general managers are. A lot of the emphasis goes on the coach. But really, you have to hire the general manager first before you hire the coach. So until we hire a general manager, I'm not going to be talking about coaches. So let's just wait until the Lions hire a general manager. I'll give my thoughts on it. Then we'll move forward from there. Just saying. I don't enjoy playing that name game. So I'm willing to give Sheila a chance. And I think Lions fans should too. At least there's some sort of hope. At least the right decision was made to fire Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. Also, another thing, let's see how much say Ernie Accorsi has in this. Because remember a couple years ago, not many people are talking about this. A couple years ago, they hired Ernie Accorsi to be a special advisor to the team, a former general manager for the Giants. With the Colts back in the day, he helped trade John Elway to the Broncos, I believe. He's been in the league for years. He's been on TV, very bright mind in the game of football. He was hired as a special advisor. We will have to see if he has any say in this. Because I don't know how much say he had in the hiring of Bob Quinn. I don't know what these special advisors really do. I don't know how much, because the Fords are ultimately the ones that are making the decision. I just thought it was something interesting, just remembering special advisor Ernie Accorsi. Last thing I want to talk about before we get to our Steve Boyd interview. Interesting comments from Matthew Stafford on Monday this week. He was asked about his future with the team, and he said, I'll figure that out and talk about that later. And so, the reason I bring this up, because, Stafford, he gives very basic answers to the media, as we all know, saying a lot and this and that. I definitely respect Matthew Stafford. He's my favorite player growing up. Personally, I think it's all going to depend on who the general manager is and who the head coach is. A new general manager might want a new quarterback. At the same time, I think the Fords are very, very loyal to Matthew Stafford. Very loyal. They're not going to trade him unless they get permission from him. If Matthew Stafford wants out and he talks to ownership, I think that's when they'll listen. But if Matthew doesn't want out, he's staying. So I don't know what that's going to be. Interesting comment that he's going to talk about that later. Probably doesn't want to talk about it right now. I get it. Maybe this comment doesn't mean anything. Who knows? But I kept telling you guys earlier, a couple months ago, remember when Dan Orlovsky made those comments? Keep that in the back of your mind. Still keep that in the back of your mind because you never know. Maybe Matthew is on his way out. Maybe he wants to talk about that later in the offseason about going to another team. I know Dan Orlovsky has said recently that he thinks Stafford should be gone. It's time for a change of scenery. Just from the quote itself, and I don't want to speculate because I don't like speculating, but to me, it just seemed as though he wasn't 100% certain, but you never know. You know, this could just be something, typical Stafford where he'll worry about that later kind of thing. Or I don't want to get into those details at this time. But still, just something interesting worth mentioning. I think it all depends on the new regime, what they want. And then if Stafford agrees with them, then they'll part ways. But if management wants to work with him, if they want to see if anything is left in the tank, see if they can salvage any part of his career. The Lions do have some young talent like Kenny Golladay, like DeAndre Swift, but obviously they have to work on the defense. That's their main goal. This should be the main goal in the draft. And I've said it all along. They should be taking a pass rusher in the draft. Obviously, we don't know where we're exactly picking. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with injuries and where guys could rise and fall and all that. But I'm just saying, as of now, I would want them to take a pass rusher, an elite pass rusher. But, if Stafford leaves, that could all change. But that's a conversation for the offseason. I guess we'll just have to see. And one more thing. How about Darrell Bevell, interim head coach? He said on Monday in his press conference that he's jacked to be the head coach. That's a good sign. But, obviously, it's not really going to matter these last 5 games. The Lions could lose all 5 games, and I don't think many people in Detroit would care. Obviously, just from a fan's perspective, I like when they win. I don't buy into that whole, tanking and who cares kind of thing. It just makes my Sunday a little bit better. But am I going to be crying if they lose? No, I'm not. I want them to win, and I hope Darrell Bevell actually instills some positivity in this team, the desire to finish out strong. But right now, everything is focused on the future with this Lions team. And joining us now here on Open Mic Night is former Lions linebacker Stephen Boyd, who played for the Lions from 1995 to 2001, 7 seasons. He was also a 2-time Pro Bowler in the 1999 and 2000 seasons. Yeah, Steve, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, first question here for you. You grew up on Long Island, and you still live there today. How did you get into football? Growing up on that side of town.
Well, when I was 6 or 7. I have my older brother Richie, is 4 years older than me. I followed him around everywhere, so I basically just wanted to be wherever he was, whatever he was doing. And he was going to play soccer. And so I wanted to play soccer. So originally I played soccer. Then after 2 years of soccer, I told my mother, I was 9 at the time, I said, I want to play football. Because where the Little League team practiced, the Valley Stream Green Hornets, was probably, 4 or 5 blocks down from my house. And I remember walking by and seeing, the practices and the coaching and I loved watching football. And I said, I want to play. And at first my mother said, no, I don't want you to play. You're going to get hurt, blah, blah, blah. My dad would say, let him play. Let him likes it. So what happened was, this kind of funny story. They went on vacation to see my great aunt in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And so my older sister, Jean Marie, she was old enough at the time. She's 10 years older than I am. And I have another older sister, Mary. She's 7 years older than I am. So they were old enough at the time that, we stayed back and my sisters watched us. And I went over to a friend's house, a guy by the name of Rob Martini. and he was going to sign up for football. So before they dropped me off at home, they were going to stop by the field and sign him up for football. So I said, this is at 9 years old. I said, well, I asked the guy at the registration, I said, is there a fee? He said, it's $15 to sign up. Now, this is 1981, right? So I said, well, I don't have money on me. Can I still sign up? And I'll bring you the money, the first night of practice. And he said, yeah, sure, you can sign up. So then my parents got home, and my sister said, listen, I didn't know he signed up to play football. My mother was like, what? And my father said, he signed up. Let him see if he likes it. He's going to commit to it. He's going to play a year. If he signed up for the year, he's going to do it, and we'll see what happens. And then from there, the rest is really history. I played for a phenomenal little league program, the Valley Stream Green Hornets, and I think that's where you get your foundation. You learn all your core values, and everything that I've had in my life is a result of the values that the game has taught me, and especially those younger years and playing. I remember all my coaches, Tom Bain. I remember the first thing we did was how to sit up and stand up straight, and when you got down on one knee, how to get down on one knee and keep your chest up and your eyes on the coach, and listen to what he was saying. It wasn't the military. He was just teaching you valuable life skills that I think if you look around today, we need those probably more than ever. Then I had another guy by the name of John Stafford, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I mean, it's as clear in my head right now as it's ever been, and it puts a smile on my face because it was a tremendous experience. The only regret I had was I couldn't play it was called the varsity level in 8th grade because I just was too big, and I would have had to lose there was a weight limit. So I couldn't make the weight limit. So I played for a guy by the name of John Zabata at the junior high school. I feel like the stories are that I was lucky and really blessed to have a lot of great coaches, a lot of different coaches. But, the most important thing to all of them was, to be a great person before you could ever try to be a great athlete or a great football player. And, I got that from my parents as well. So that's a special, very, very special thing. High school, I went to a high school, Valley Stream Central High School, where they didn't have a history of winning seasons. A lot of the guys talked about maybe going to private schools, but I really felt like we had a great group of guys. We won a lot at a young age, and we kind of all wanted to turn it around and win in high school, and we were lucky enough to do that. And we won a championship my senior year, and it wasn't because of me, but it was a team effort. And I can tell you right now, Tommy McPherson, these guys, Anthony IDV, all these guys, they could have been the MVP of the team, not me. And that's a special thing. We beat a team that we shouldn't have beat. And again, a tremendous experience. Then went on to Boston College, and I'm talking a little bit too much, I think, but I'll give it back to you. It's your show, and I'll let you ask some more questions.
No, you're good, Steve. But fast forward to Boston College, as you mentioned. For a little bit, you played for Tom Coughlin, who later on won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants at Boston College. So, how did he motivate you to become a better player? And, could you see from the get-go, when you were there, that he could make it as a really good NFL head coach?
He could have led the country. He could be the president of the United States, kind of wish he was. The energy and the intensity that he brought when he walked into a room was tremendous. You felt something very energizing and intense when he walked into the room. And I remember he came in the winter of my freshman year, and he, that was a tough winter. We had really tough morning workouts, and he needed to change the culture, and he needed to. We come off of 4, and listen, the guy before him, the coach before him, Jack Bicknell, who recruited me, tremendous guy, great guy, loved Jack Bicknell. He recruited me. He sat in my living room. It was like having your uncle over. The guy, tremendous guy. But then Coughlin came in, and he basically said, listen, we're playing a nationally ranked schedule. You better start to believe that you're going to beat these teams. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. And you're going to work hard, and you're going to make a commitment, and we're going to win football games. I don't care who comes in here. You better expect, we need every guy to believe that we're going to win. And that's what he did. He changed the culture. And, he was tough. He was tough, but he didn't really ask you to do anything that other people asked you to do. He asked you to be on time, and he asked you to work hard. And that was it. And he held you accountable. I think the number one thing that he did, I know for me, was he held you accountable. If you missed class, if you were late for class, if you missed, he held you accountable. Do your job, be on time, be at every meeting 5 minutes before. So, I've carried all these with me. On time is late, but he was just trying to get everybody, again, to do those little things. If you do all the little things right, you make the commitment, you work hard, we hold each other accountable, we're going to win. And we did. We ended up, I was sad that he left. But I think we kind of all knew in the back of our minds that, this guy is on fire. If he turned this thing around fast, he's got a lot of momentum going. And, I'm happy for him. He won when he went to Jacksonville, and then he changed that whole thing around. And, you heard all the whispering in the background about, he's too tough on his players. And anyway, he is tough. He the expectations are high, but if you want to win, especially in the NFL, the expectations are high. It's not easy to win in the league. And he was able to set a culture. It wasn't just football. You kind of felt like the basketball team, the hockey team who was already successful. Everybody kind of, it kind of took off. It spread. And I remember the basketball team going to the Final Eight one year, my senior year. And the whole, he uplifted, I believe, the whole school. So it was really great to be a part of that. But then as I coached, I was able to reflect on some of those things and use a lot of the principles that he used. Sometimes I caught myself sounding like him a lot, which is kind of funny. Now, if I did some of the things he did to us, I might have been taken out in handcuffs. But it wasn't that bad. But, again, just simple things done the right way every day. And I'm not surprised that he did the success he had. And I was happy that he was able to do it in New York, being from New York. I'm always a Lions fan first. But when you see people excited in the area, and they talk about the local team, they talk about the Giants, they talk about Coughlin, and I don't bring it up. I don't say I played for him. I played for him. I don't do that. But I just kind of smile and go, yeah, that's a special thing to be a part of. So it was my fifth year. I had a coach by the name. So Coughlin left, and I had Dan Henning, who was actually in Detroit before I was there. I think it was like the early 90s he was there. And when I got to Detroit, everybody talked about, what a smart offensive mind. And he was, and we won a lot of games my senior year because of what he was able to do with our offense. We had lost a lot of great players. So again, I feel like I had three coaches in 5 years. They were all great guys, and I learned a tremendous amount from each one of them.
When you moved to the Lions, 1995, you got drafted by them in the fifth round. What was your initial reaction to that when you heard your name called?
Oh, I was like through the roof. And obviously you think about, Barry Sanders and Thanksgiving, and then a guy that I always looked up to, Chris Spielman, and my college roommate and one of my closest friends, Pete Mitchell, is from Bloomfield Hills. Him and his family, he has two older brothers. So their phones ringing, going, yeah, it's like there was a lot going on. And it was great to be able to be close to them. But, you're so excited to get your name called. And then you go there and reality kicks in. I remember the first time I saw Barry Sanders walk through the locker room. I'm kind of like, I'm on the same team as him. Like how did this happen? But yeah, I was fired up. I was excited. And my dad was always a fan of Wayne Fontes. Because, Wayne Fontes, he's a tremendous personality. He was, whether you were a Lions fan or not, I think people liked him just because he was, and you can say whatever you want to say about him. I think he's a great guy. But he was a different character, as a head coach. So, there was a lot going on. I was just really excited to be out in Michigan and Detroit. What a tremendous sports town. I was very, very excited about it.
So your rookie year, you mentioned Chris Spielman and how much influence that he had on you. Just talk a little bit more about that. Of course, you were his backup. How much did you learn from him? One of the best defensive players in Lions history, and now obviously working as a color analyst for Fox.
I learned a tremendous amount from Chris. Chris told me, he said, "Listen, this is how we do things. we're going to meet 6:30 a.m. or 7 a.m. every morning before the regular defensive meeting. We start at 8. Tuesdays on our day off, we're still coming in and we're going to meet at 8. And we're going to watch film, and we're going to watch as much film and study as much about our opponent before we get to the meeting where you're going to actually study your opponent. So I said, this is a tremendous opportunity to learn from one of the best. And I'm just going to show up. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to listen. Even if he asks me, and you could ask him this, it was myself, Scott Kolakowski, and Chris Spielman. And I was there every morning with Colo, who's the best. Tremendous guy. And Chris. And now Colo was allowed to give Chris some jabs here and there. I didn't say anything. I never laughed. I just sat there and listened. And it's almost like an apprenticeship. I was able to see how one of the greatest of all time did it, and just emulate that and listen and kind of take that. He provided the manual for me. Like, this is how you do it. This is how you be a pro. And this is what being a professional football player means. And it was probably the greatest learning experience of my life. I can't say enough about Chris. I can't say enough about Scott. I mean, I learned more from those two guys that year than you could imagine. I mean, if I ever wrote a book, I mean, I don't know how many chapters I'd have to dedicate to that whole experience. It was tremendous. And there's some funny stuff too that went on. But, the thing about Chris that I loved was when it was 7:00, and it kind of reminds me of Coughlin. It's business. We don't have time. We can kid around, have a good time. We're going to do that after the meeting, or we're going to do that before the meeting. But let's get it done. We got work to do. Let's get it done. And he was focused and tough. He played half that season with a torn pec. I don't know if too many people know that. Nowadays, you see, guys with a torn pec, they're on IR in a split second. He played half the season with a torn pec and still, had, I don't know how many tackles, but the guy played. It was incredible to watch. And, it's funny. I haven't really talked about it in a long time, but now that I'm talking about it, maybe I should write a book because it was really an incredible. And I think that's something that young athletes or anybody anywhere in any field of work, if you're able to find somebody, or if you're lucky enough to be in the presence of somebody who has done it and is a professional and has done it consistently year after year after year, that's somebody you need to spend time with. I think sometimes we get a lot of younger people who come in and they feel like they're going to change the world and they know it all. I think we all need to kind of listen first and find that mentor. I mean, I was lucky enough to have it because they're out there. And the one thing that I've learned is that people like to be asked questions. People like to be asked about, hey, how did you get to where you got to? What is it that you do? What is your daily routine? People want to share that. And I think that's important. The younger, and listen, we're all always still going to learn. Everybody's always going to look for the next mentor, year after year. But when you're out of college or high school, go find that person and learn from that person. Because to me, it's like an apprenticeship. That's how you learn, by doing. And you learn by modeling yourself after what somebody else who does it at a high level does. And I think, if that makes sense, I think that's so important. I really do.
So you mentioned even before.
I'm done. I was a little bit of a rant, but it really was very impactful on my life.
Oh, no, absolutely. No. And you could definitely write a book for sure. But you talked a bit about Barry Sanders before and how surreal it was walking into the same locker room as him for the first time. How much did practicing against him make you a better player?
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember Wayne Font saying, don't hit number 20. If you're a rookie and you accidentally bump into him, you're going to get cut. But Barry, the thing about Barry was he's such a great guy. He's such a humble, tremendous guy. I remember we do one-on-one drills. And, it's almost like, okay, you're going to compete because if you can cover him, you can cover anybody. And sometimes I'm like, is he even going hard? Is he even going full speed? Like, he just broke both my ankles. And I jump to him and be like, all right. And he'd go, yeah, you had me. You got me. And have a little smile on you. And you just laugh. He didn't do it in a way. He had fun. And I just remember sometimes going, like, is he even going? Like, I'm going 100%. I think he might be at like 75, and it's still way beyond what I could imagine. And I remember my rookie year. One story was we were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers the first regular season of my rookie year. So our offense went on the field, and our defense, normally we sit down and we go over the previous drive. So I sat down where I thought I should be sitting. I just didn't want to be in anybody's way. I was a rookie, and no one else was sitting down. I remember Tracy Hayworth, linebacker Tracy, wait, come here. I'm like, we're supposed to be sitting down. I don't want to be, no, come here. He's like, you're about to watch Barry Sanders live. Watch the greatest of all time. And I'm like, holy cow, yeah. I totally forgot. I was so nervous. And Barry gets the ball. And it might have been like a 2-yard gain, but it was one of the greatest runs I've ever seen in my life. And Rod Woodson, the old pro free safety, he unbelievable football player, comes running down, and Barry put a move on him. And I think Rod Woodson, and I feel bad saying this, but I think Rod Woodson actually hurt his knee on the play and was out for the season, I think. And I just remember going, oh, wow, this is different. Because in the preseason, it's not full speed yet. But that first game, and, the Steelers had Kevin Green. They had a defense that was incredible. And he was just making people look silly, like 2 or 3 yard gains. And it was just like, this is different. This is a lot different. And it was enjoyable to be able to be on his team. He's a great guy. And to watch him play it was incredible.
So fast forward a little bit to after Barry leaves, 1999, you guys actually quietly made the playoffs, went 9-7, and in 2000 also had a winning record under Bobby Ross, a new coach after Wayne Fontes, of course. And even without being one of the elite teams in the NFL and, losing a little luster on offense, especially with Barry being gone, how did you yourself, who made the Pro Bowl that year, guys like Robert Porcher, Luther Ellis on defense, how did you guys step up and, end up making the playoffs that year?
I think, every year, I think in every form of success, there's always a point, or a tipping point, or there's a story. There's something that motivates you that might not be what you thought would originally be. I don't think anybody knew that Barry wasn't going to be there that year. And I remember pulling up to training camp and seeing all the different media outlets, not like today, but it was a lot more than normal, and kind of like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden you're checking in and you kind of hear like, Barry's not coming back. What? Barry's not coming back, but he has the football. Like, we can't play without him. It's like when you're a kid, your buddies all get together and go play, and the one guy that has all the equipment doesn't show up. You're like, we can't play without him. So Bobby Ross, we had a meeting, and Bobby said, listen, here's the deal, and we addressed it, and we all said, okay, we're going to move on without him. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We're just going to go to work and do what we have to do. And, he provided tremendous leadership. Bobby Ross did. And the players, I think we all just said, okay, listen, this is a tough, but we all love him. We think the world of Barry. He's not here. We still all have jobs to do, and we need to go out there and do them. And that season kind of went the way it did. It's again, I don't think anybody came out and said, well, we're gonna prove the world that we can win without Barry. I think it was something that was underlying. I think it was something that was kind of like a quiet theme that we didn't go out and promote, but everybody knew in their minds is, okay, we still have jobs to do, and we're here to win. So let's go out and win. And whether whoever's playing, sometimes you have injuries during the season, the next guy's got to step up. When you lose a player like that, now 52 other guys have to step up. So, and everybody did. I'm proud to be a part of that team and proud to be a part of that season. I think Bobby Ross did a great job leading us, and I think the players did a great job playing and doing their jobs and not falling into the traps that sometimes you can fall into with the media. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's human nature. I mean, of course they're going to ask you questions about Barry not being there. It's probably the greatest running back of all time. I think the greatest running back of all time. It's their job. So as a player, you just, hey, listen, Barry's not here. We're going to go move on, play without him. And I think guys did a great job doing that.
Larry Pectello, your defensive coordinator for the Lions, 1997 to 2000. He was the defensive coordinator for Joe Gibbs when he won all those Super Bowls in the 80s and early 90s with the Redskins. So how much did his experience with that success in Washington. How did that help you guys play well defensively?
Oh, yeah, he was a great coach, very smart guy. And again, had a tremendous amount of experience. He's another coach and another one of those guys that you're fortunate enough to be around. And he had a system. And I remember in the beginning of the week, we had a game plan. And I think the great thing that he did was by the end of the week, he didn't force us to do things we weren't comfortable doing. This is working. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's pull out the things that maybe we're not comfortable with doing. And I think he did a great job preparing us to play. And obviously that comes from all his experiences coaching. Him, Gary Moeller, obviously, who I could talk about forever, and then Dick Seltzer was a defensive backs coach, and then Don Clemens was defensive assistant. Clemens, we had a tremendous defensive staff, and I think Peck, did a great job putting in his system. And again, not asking us to do things that we couldn't do, trying to put everybody in the right position to be the best that they could be.
So how have you seen, of course, you were the middle linebacker for the Lions for 7 seasons. So how have you seen the middle linebacker position change over the years in the NFL? And also, how have the complexity of defenses changed in the NFL as well?
Well, I think, you have to be able to play in space. I think a lot more. I think you're going to have to, now obviously you're going to have to, with a lot of the different formations and a lot of the speed that's on the field, now every tight end could be, every tight end is kind of built like Tony Gonzalez. You can block or you can get out in the slot and run a route, and you have to be able to play with 6 in the box, meaning, they spread you out and it's kind of like there's not a lot of places to hide. You're exposed. But on the flip side, the game, it's still, you got a key and you got to react and you got to tackle. And, a lot of on the angles, taking the right angle, knowing where your help is, those are still the same. But I think the formations and the different packages of players that they put on the field, it may expose, I think, you can make up for a lack of speed in a lot of ways. There's game speed and then there's just track speed. But I do think now, a lot of your middle linebackers are kind of more like outside linebackers who have kind of been transformed a little bit, or bigger, strong. Not all of them, but I watch the guys play, and these guys are flying. These guys are moving because they're asked to do a lot of different things. You don't see a lot of, or maybe you do. I haven't watched too much. I try to watch as much as I can, but you don't see too many I formations with the tight end. The offense is spread out, and again, that'll change the way the guys in the middle will play a little bit. So to answer your question, which I'm trying to do, is I think they have to have a little bit more range. I think it's no longer tackle to tackle. Everybody talks about sideline to sideline. Yeah, it's definitely sideline to sideline now. And, speed is speed. You have to be able to move. The days of the double tight formation, you don't see too much of that, maybe on the goal line. And I think now, too, it just seems like the quarterbacks are just the good ones are just so accurate. So the way you play your pass defense, I think, probably has changed. Although, you can't even really hit the quarterback anymore. So they have a little bit to throw it, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's really, I believe, your range, your ability to move outside of the tackle box and be able to defend in space, tackle in space. And, you might be asked to cover a guy and you're giving up, a couple of tenths on your 40-yard dash. And that's just the way it is. And again, there's game speed and then there's track speed. But I do think you need a little bit more. You might need a little bit more track speed to help your game speed, especially nowadays with the stuff that they're doing.
So, Steve, you played in many Thanksgiving games for the Lions, and a couple memorable ones as well, including that 1998 game with the coin flip before overtime started. We just had Thanksgiving. Do you have a favorite Thanksgiving memory as a Lion?
Yeah, I think that 98 game probably was one of my favorites. I actually had a shoulder injury, and I didn't practice that week, and I was going to be an unrestricted free agent after that season. And I remember, I'm like, listen, if I can play, I'm playing. And we didn't have a winning record at the time. I think we were 5-11 that year. Some people were saying, don't play. Why would you play? You're going to risk doing more damage to your shoulder. And I said, listen, my dad was a union carpenter in New York City for 44 years. He never missed a day of work. I had a job to do. And if I'm able to play, I'm going to play. And I want to play. So I woke up and I felt I felt good that day, and I had a brace on, and I did some drills in the pregame. And I said, to Mo, I said, I'm good, man. I'm good to go. He said, he kind of looking like, really? He said, you haven't practiced all week. I said, I'm playing. I said, I'm able, and there's a thing to that too, where, and this is what a lot of people don't understand now. You could say that you're able to play, but they're going to have to deactivate somebody. So if you say it, you better be able to play, because if you go a quarter and then you're done, you hurt the team more than not playing. It's like a half-hearted commitment is worse than no commitment at all. So if you say you're good, if you say you can go, you better be able to go. But I felt really good, and I think the reason why I felt really good is because I didn't practice for 3 days. I think I got my legs back and just got into the flow of the game and felt really good and was making a lot of plays. And fortunately, we ended up winning the game. We beat the Steelers. It was a big win, and I was happy for the whole city of Detroit, to have – we weren't having a winning season, and there you are in the Silverdome. There's 80,000 people. Think about it. We had like 4 wins, and the place is packed. And that's like, that's the thing that I remember about Detroit. That the fans were tremendous. What a sports town. Great people. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Look at this. I think all of us kind of felt like, wow, this is incredible. And I think that inspired us. And we went out, we played well, and we beat the Steelers, and we changed the history of the coin toss forever. It was a great day.
Phil Luckett, the referee, of course, with the air. The coin flip was history, I guess. But
poor Shea, I think poor Shea's face is the greatest on TV. He plays down so, cool. He's just kind of, okay, yeah, we'll take the ball.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that was him. He's a smooth guy. Funny stuff.
That is funny for sure. But final question for you, Steve. After your football career, you actually got into coaching. You helped out at Chaminade High School, an all-boys high school on Long Island. What did you learn from football during your playing days that helped you when you got into coaching and teaching?
I think just the structure and discipline, and it's not about X's and O's. It's about people. These are young men who you have to reach in a different way. And there's an old saying: they don't care how much you know, they know how much you care, and that's the truth. You gotta be authentic. You can't try to be something that you're not. And I couldn't coach the team a certain way somebody else would. I had to coach the team the way I knew how and fit my personality, and I did. That's the way I coached. And again, it's about reaching the kids. And these are high school students first. It's an all-boys Catholic school. Their faith comes first, then their academics, then their football. And I was lucky enough to be at a school where you didn't have to really – you just had to follow the school's philosophy. And if you did that, everything was fine. And it's all about serving other people and doing the right thing, regardless who is watching. So basically the philosophy of the school, the Mariners community is about serving other people. It's about being a great teammate is really what it's all about. And when you have that support system and when you have that philosophy as a school, all you have to do is just kind of bring it into your program, your football program, and things are going to work out. So I was fortunate. I had a great situation. We were able to do some really, really good things. Won a championship one year, which was a lot of fun. But my whole thing was, we're going to prepare to win. And, the same things that you do in the classroom, we're going to do on the football field. And it all comes from preparation. And again, we're going to hold everybody accountable. We're going to be disciplined, and we're going to play hard. We're not going to worry about making mistakes. We're going to go out. We're going to play hard. Again, we're going to hold each other accountable, and we're going to be a great teammate. And it was a tremendous experience. I had a lot of fun doing it. I had a lot of great people that coached with me. And again, I said this earlier to you, it brings so many great things back into your life because it's the game at its purest form. There's no money involved. There's no business involved. You're trying to teach young people, you're trying to teach boys how to be men. And I think, like I said earlier, I might have learned more from those kids than they learned from me, because it brought so many great values back into my life that I hope that I can pass on to my own kids one day.
Steve Boyd, former Detroit Lion, played 7 seasons for them, 2-time Pro Bowler as well. Steve, thanks again so much for joining us here.
Thank you. It was great. I hope I haven't talked about a lot of this experience in a long time. And just to the people of Detroit and the fans, thank you and good luck. And I hope everything gets turned around, and best to the team and best to you. this has been tremendous. This is with everything that's going on in this world. This has been a highlight and has made my Thanksgiving. So thank you for having me.
I want to thank Steve Boyd for joining us here on Open Mic Night. What a great interview. Really, really fun. Glad he was able to reminisce about his old Lions days, and he was doing some great work as coaching at Chaminade All Boys High School in Long Island. So being a great member of the community, he was a great player for the Lions as well. Make sure to check out the other content on the podcast network. Fan Report comes out every Monday. Michigan Podcast every Wednesday. Fanalists Podcast also. And obviously the mainstays, Doc and Jock and the Wrestling Podcast. Really, really fun to listen to. Go check that out as well. Hopefully next week we'll have a little more positive things to talk about besides just firings. Michigan State picking up a big, big win over top 10 ranked and undefeated Northwestern. Michigan State basketball also getting in the swing of things, looking like a very, very good defensive team. And Michigan just losing to winless Penn State. I mean, what else is new with this team? So maybe we'll have more of that to talk about. I love Michigan State basketball. I think we're going to be talking a lot about that later on. Hoping to get some good guests on for you as well. But thanks again, folks. Hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving out there. And make sure to tune in next week, only on Open Mic Night.